The human reset is about a 30-year reset from 2020 to 2050-ish. What they have discovered is the entire universe is in superposition, and every element in it is in superposition. Well, as Bashar kind of puts it, we're actually finally becoming fully human, because we're not fully human yet. The evolutionary path for humanity is what he calls evolving into the sixth hybrid race. Even if we're shifting off like this, we may still be able to reconnect. But what we're saying is the shifts are getting farther and farther and farther apart. The very first step was start letting go of your conspiracy theories so that it's not serving you. We all are going to have to face the idea that we're not alone in our own ways. And some people will be okay with that, and some people won't be for a while.
How is humanity currently going to deal with that kind of event?
It doesn't really matter much anymore what the outcome of your elections are, what the outcome of your political, social, economic, religious systems are. Contact is now inevitable. Suddenly, we're going to be riding the rapids. But after we learn to do that, we'll come out at the other end in another peaceful river, but it will be a much faster flowing river because now it's got all the momentum of the rapids behind it.
I'd like to welcome back to the show returning champion, the ultimate returning champion, Darryl Anka.
Hi, Alex.
Hey, Darryl.
What, number 7?
I think we're at least at number 6. It could be possibly number 7. I didn't actually look, but you are the record holder for returning champions onto the show, because I love you so much, man, and the audience loves anytime you and I get together. People seem to like it.
I love doing your show.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And I wanted to say thank you again so much for being part of Wisdom from Beyond, our virtual summit. People absolutely loved it. It was the first time I got to speak to Bashar, which was super exciting for me. So that was a really exciting thing. So I appreciate you being a part of that, making that
Thank
awesome.
you for doing that. We appreciate that too. Any outlet like that is always appreciated. So thanks.
So I brought you back because this is going to be airing in right at the end of this year or beginning of next. So January, late December, early January, somewhere around that time. And there's a lot of people looking at the next coming year with a little bit of fear, a little bit of anxiety. It all depends. Now, I know in the United States, at least, over half the population is super excited about what's coming. Other half, maybe not so much. But I think in between there, they might not be excited about everything that's coming, and they might not be depressed about everything that's or scared about what everything is coming. So from your point of view and Bashar's point of view, what are the things happening in this up and coming specific year? Because I know over the next decade to 2, we're going through this massive, massive shift.
Yes.
But this seems like it's going to be every year has been a hell of a year since 2020.
Pivotal year.
Yeah. So what are you guys seeing? Both you and Bashar.
Well, I mean, first of all, I would say let's not assume that we know what's coming, because things keep changing drastically in very short order. So I don't think we have seen the dust settle yet for everything that's happening in this country or in the world. Things tend to shift very rapidly now, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that happening, a lot of really unexpected rapid shifts. I would, in terms of certain things that have to do with this country, I would turn people over to what Bashar said in one of his latest transmissions, which was called Echoes of Sedona, where he kind of explains a lot about what he said in Sedona. And I don't want to paraphrase him, because what he said in the Echoes of Sedona transmission is very specific in terms of the way he explained things. So I would just basically overall turn people onto that transmission to answer certain questions. But I do think in 2025, I mean, again, he has always said for a while now that we are going to have open contact within the next 5 years. So we're definitely starting to be within that window now
Hmm.
where, we might start seeing more UFOs. We might start hearing about more disclosure events that have to do with Congress and government and all sorts of things. So I think bit by bit, we're going to be exposed to more information and more events that have to do with disclosure or open contact. And that's going to accelerate, I think, through 25 and 26. So things like that are coming up.
Hmm.
Um,
Is there anything, it seems like there's a lot of dirty laundry is coming up, or a lot of the dirt and the muck that was hidden is starting to bubble up to the surface. Like, off the top of my head, just the P. Diddy arrest in Hollywood, and the ripples of that thing is going
yeah.
to do through that industry, which you and
Well,
I are both were part of.
sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll give you just a tiny preview with a title. The next transmission that Bashar is going to give for January is titled No More Secrets. So he's going to be talking about the impact of holding on to what he calls consequential secrets, and how those things need to really be let go of, and people need to stop doing whatever it is that would be considered a secret that would have consequences far beyond themselves that might impact other people in negative ways, or things like that. So because it's like it's all about sort of stripping away all the things that would cause our vibration to be lower than it could be, and holding on to certain consequential secrets keeps us in a state that is not conducive to open contact. So he's going to, I think, be explaining the idea of we need to like stop doing the behaviors that we have been keeping secret for any reason whatsoever that would have some sort of consequence or impact on those around us, in order to really move forward in a more streamlined way. I mean, this kind of goes back to what he had talked about a few years ago that he called the eye of the needle, where we really have to let go of all of the things that are really not in alignment with our true vibration so that we can fit through the very narrow aperture cleanly as possible that represents the window, the small window of vibrational resonance that is conducive to moving forward in a positive way and having open contact and allowing the formula that he shares with us to work more efficiently. Because when we hold on to things that are contrary to that vibration, it makes it that much harder for the things that he's sharing with us to work. So coming up, I think it's about divesting ourselves in our lives of things that we're holding on to that really keep our vibration low and or lower than it could be, and just stripping them all away and being our true natural selves so we can accelerate forward for things like open contact and also just making our world a more balanced place.
So what you're saying is, or what Bashar is saying, is that the secrets that we hold actually hold our vibrations lower and down. Obviously, the kind of secrets that we're talking about, like
Yeah.
the organizational secrets, government secrets, religious secrets.
Personal secrets that are impactful to other. In other words, he's not saying, you can't, he's not talking about the kind of secrets where we're not telling someone that we're arranging a surprise birthday party for them. He's
No, no, no,
obviously,
no, no, no. I'm talking traumatic secrets of things that are obviously at a very low vibration. So on a
right,
macro level, it would be governments, it would be organizations, it would be companies, it'd
right,
be industries. On a personal level as well, holding on
right,
to deep secrets or holding on to deep trauma that
right.
kind of is holding us down at that vibration, that frequency. Letting
Yes,
go of that is when we could start to rise and
yes,
raise our frequency and vibration.
right. So no more secrets. Yeah.
No more. So basically, no more secrets. So is that why and since I came into this space about 3 years ago. So you've been in this space for a long time, in the spiritual space, in the consciousness space. You've seen this
Yeah.
kind of happen.
Mhm.
What was the pivotal year that you actually saw, was it 2012? Was it 2000? Was there a year that just like, oh, things are starting to pick up? I've heard 2016, I've heard
Well, yeah,
2012.
absolutely. Absolutely 2012, absolutely 2016. And I would say 2020. We're getting kind of bumps every 4 years in a certain way.
Oh God,
Uh,
this is our fourth year again.
exactly. And therefore all these things are starting to accelerate.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's why again, in the next 4 or 5 years, we're going to get a huge bump of introduction to extraterrestrials and all sorts of things going on that have been going on for a while behind the scenes. And it's time for a lot of that to come out. And in addition to the idea of no more secrets, right? So even the revelation of the existence of extraterrestrials is a big one. No more
Yeah.
secrets. Now we have to
Let me
deal with the effect of all that.
let me ask you. There was something I was listening to a physicist the other day, and he said something that was really interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. That we have been around as a species for a very, very, very short amount of time. Um, Very short amount of time. Even if let's say we take into consideration the yuga cycles and that we've come and gone and we've been elevated and we've been down as far as our consciousnesses are concerned. And every
Sure.
10,000, 12,000 years, we get kind of reset like we did with Atlantis and so on. Let's just say that for
Right.
argument's sake. So we've been around for 200,000, 250,000 years, let's say, give
Maybe.
or take, maybe longer, maybe less, give or
Yeah.
take.
I mean, and depends on where you draw the line as to, what is Homo sapiens, what is, Homo
Yeah,
erectus, all that kind of
right.
stuff.
Um, and
Generously, let's say 1 million years, but that's still short
generously.
logically history.
Yeah, and then the dinosaurs were around for 200 or 300 million
In years.
years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they were pumping along really quickly, and during that time they never evolved
Well, they
to
did.
no, no, to us. I mean, to a
Oh,
point
to
of
us.
our technology.
No.
No, at least I don't think so. That would be a super cool cartoon from the 1980s if it was. Um, I'm sure there was some sort of dino writers. I remember something along those lines. Intelligent
Yeah.
dinosaurs.
Actually, a friend of mine created that series.
Oh, really good. I remember there was something like that in the back of my
Yeah.
head. Teenage Mutant Ninja Dinosaurs. Uh, that's a free one. Anyone could take that if they want to go and make it right now. Go for it. But so there was all that time. But what they said was is like the chance. He said something very clear, and he comes from a scientific, not a spiritual point of view. He's like, on a logical standpoint, there is how many universes out there in the watchable in the visual what we can actually see, and which is about 3% of they say
Yeah.
3%
Yeah.
of the actual whatever we can actually perceive. In that small amount, there is billions and billions of universes like ours. Within those, there's probably hundreds of millions of Earth-like
Mhm.
planets if to create life. Like he said,
Sure.
but the thing is this, that if there was an evolution like in Bashar's situation, right? He is a little bit ahead of us, or maybe a
Yes.
far ahead of us as far as evolutionarily speaking.
A few
Um,
thousand,
how many years?
about 3,000 years.
So that's nothing. That's really not a whole lot of time in the scope of the
No.
universe.
No, but
So
again,
that
remember, we're an artificial species, so they had a head start, but nevertheless.
exactly. But let's say that's still a lot. He goes, what does it take to have a species that's like, let's say we were around for another 100,000 years? What
Hmm.
kind of strides would we be able to get? So out of all those universes, all those civilizations that are potentially happened, how many survived? How many actually lasted more than 10, 20, 30,000 years? So I'm curious to hear what you or Bashar has ever said about that possibility of these other, and
Well,
let's not even talk about realms and
yeah,
timelines.
it almost doesn't really matter because really you're talking about something that is, for all practical purposes, infinite. And
Yeah.
therefore, even if 99.9% of civilizations that occur vanish, that would still leave a lot of civilizations that made it because we're talking about an infinite number of universes. So you can't really calculate how many may have made it with a definitive finite number because it could be thousands, it could be hundreds of thousands, it still could be millions, it could be billions when you're talking about infinite parallel realities and infinite multiverse, you know. So in a sense, it doesn't really matter how many failed, because in an infinite multiverse, an equal number could have succeeded.
Do we, let's go back to the human species. It
Mm.
seems that we have recycled ourselves, like cycled ourselves, that the universe runs in cycles, the astrological cycles, the planetary
Well,
cycles,
and
everything.
especially on Earth, yeah, we're
Yeah.
a planet of cycles, definitely.
And then as humanity has cycled, so I kind of it talked about a little bit about what happened with Atlantis, that at that
Mm.
point there was a catastrophic flood that kind of cleaned the slate, and then we had to start civilization over again,
Right.
essentially. And it seems that's uh, a kind of recurring theme in humanity, where even 20,000
Yes.
years, 40,000 years, there's these kind of stories in antiquity that talks about that. Is it
Well,
what
and
it,
even before what we consider to be civilizations, there have been many mass extinctions, and
right,
it's
exactly.
over again and over again and over again and over again. So
So
yeah.
my question to you and to Bashar is why? Why is humanity never given a straight line of evolution and consciousness shifting that is happening now? And why do we have to constantly kind of go back? Even the Yuga cycle of starting at the top, going down to the dark ages, and then now we're on our way back up, and that's why we're
Yeah.
closer.
Well,
Why do that?
a simple analogy is, why don't we stay in kindergarten? Why do we graduate to the first grade? Why don't we stay in the first grade? Why do we graduate to the second grade? It's a graduation process.
Right, but then we're sent back to kindergarten after we've gotten our PhD.
But
That's my
we're not.
question.
But we're not,
Okay.
because
Okay.
there is always information that remains from the previous cycle that allows us to, if we're smart enough, to use that to accelerate farther before the next cycle. So it's kind of like the old thing that Bashar said, it's not so much that we're up and down like this in a straight line. We're up and then we're down to zero, and we're up and we're down to zero and we're up. It's like this, where we're constantly slowly
Um,
climbing over time. We may be going up and down, but there's always something left over that we can use to climb a little higher the next time, and a little higher the next time, and a little higher the next time, until we get to the point, which is where I think we're at now, where we don't have to necessarily go through a cycle of mass destruction, but we do have to deconstruct ourselves and our society in order to now not destroy ourselves, but use the information that we've learned in the last cycle to accelerate forward without necessarily going through a completely destructive period on a massive scale. But we have to be the ones to deconstruct it now in a more positive way. So that's why, again, I'm saying it's all about stripping ourselves away from all the things that don't serve us, that don't allow us to move forward. This is one of the lessons that we are supposedly learning in this new cycle, is to let go of those things that have been holding us back to the point where we have to zero ourselves out and sort of clean the slate and start over. Now the idea of cleaning the slate is to not get rid of everything, but to keep the core essential things and keep ourselves conscious in that moment, so that we can more consciously accelerate forward. And that's what's really going to give us the boost for the next cycle, is to be the masters of our own cycle, to create how we go through the next cycle, how we start the next cycle, instead of just saying, oh, we just have to erase everything and start over. Now it's like, well, we have to get rid of certain things so we can start over from a higher level, instead of forgetting everything and having to start from scratch.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So then through these cycles, do we bring in karma or lessons that were not learned from, like, let's say the Atlantean times that we came in now? Because we're obviously technologically, from everything I've understood, and please correct me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
Atlantis, to my understanding, had a higher level of technology in a certain way. They didn't have internet. They didn't do certain things like we have now. They didn't have
Different.
iPhones,
It was
but there was
different.
different. Yeah, they had
Hey,
different tech. They had that dinosaur. They had that dinosaur, the intelligent dinosaur TV show. That's for sure. But
yeah.
other than that, so they were different technologies. but
Yes.
we didn't learn a lot of lessons. They destroyed themselves, obviously, and there was a flood, and
Yes.
there was a lot of
But
things
they
that
left,
happened.
but they did leave a lot of knowledge in things like the pyramids and so on, and temples around the world. So again, there would be something that we would have to rediscover, so all the knowledge was not completely lost. That's why we discovered and starting to discover things like, oh, look at all the math in the pyramids, and look at all this in the temples, and they were all built around sort of the same time. And why is that? Well, these are markers left for us so we don't have to start completely from scratch again. So, they did leave us knowledge in a certain, just because there were survivors. So they left us
Sure.
knowledge in civilizations that help us in the next cycle. But, I wouldn't exactly call it karma in the old-fashioned sense, but definitely there
Mhm.
are lessons that we're picking up and taking forward. And, Bashar has recently said a few times before, Earth is a place where we're kind of finishing a lot of stories from a lot of different places, not even just on Earth.
Mhm.
So we've got like what he calls, the old Orion systems. People are here playing out those stories. Atlantis, Mars, all the things that we consider to have been places where we experienced high negativity, high destruction, things like that are sort of all now here on Earth with an opportunity to end those stories differently. So this is like a real melting pot of different soul paths and different soul stories over millennia and millions of years coming to Earth to go, here is where we can create a new ending for all of these different stories. So we're a real mix of all these different, like, well, I have these connections, you have Atlantean connections, maybe you have Mars connections, maybe you have Orion connections, and we're all here going, we can use the cycles of Earth to end all these stories and transform all these stories in a much more positive way. And that's kind of what's going on here, and why the energy is so powerful and so palpable is we have all of these stories attempting to finish themselves and transform into more positive endings all at the same time. So Earth has a lot of momentum behind it to kick ourselves up to the next level by learning the lessons of all of those stories and hopefully moving them all in a more positive direction.
Is this why everything is so damn fast right now? Like, it's
Yeah.
just moving at the speed of light, technology and
Mhm.
changes and
Yeah.
systems breaking down. I mean, in the last 10 years, I
Mhm.
mean, again, you've been around the planet a little bit longer than I have, but even, in the 80s, things
Yeah.
were slow. 90s, it sped up a little bit. 2000s, it sped up a little bit more, but now it just seems like it's like a rocket ship. Every day, every month, something's
Well,
changing.
it's like exponential, that
Yeah.
you're literally are accelerate. I mean, that's what acceleration is, right? You get
It's
faster and faster in a shorter and shorter and shorter period of time. So yeah, well, there's a lot of momentum, a lot of energy behind the evolution of humanity. We are in that time of humanity being reset. So yeah, things are going to speed up even more. And that's what's important about understanding when we get to the point within the next 5 years where we have open extraterrestrial contact, that is really going to to be the sort of the culmination point of, okay, now you have to get used to a whole other level of what it means to accelerate because they're going to be instrumental. Well, and they have been being instrumental in helping us with technological breakthroughs and things like that. But that's all been behind the scenes. But now it's going to break out into the mainstream and now it's going to break out into public awareness. And so when we are all made aware of what they've already been doing to get us to this point and help us accelerate forward in ideally a more positive way, once that's made clear, then it's like all bets are off. Oh, okay. We've had this backing and this momentum behind us pushing us forward in a positive way, in an accelerated way for so long that now where it's like breaking the sound barrier, where now that it's out in the open within the next 5 years, now the sky's the limit. Now we can just go, okay, let's just go. Because now we have all the resources that we never knew we had in connecting to galactic federations and all sorts of stuff. of course, still at a pace we can handle. We're still going to be the new kids on the block in terms of the galactic family. But nevertheless, it's going to open up vistas to us that we've never really imagined before. And it's going to cause a monumental acceleration. But at first, it will probably, for some people, cause still a lot of chaos. It's like riding the rapids all of a sudden. We've been sort of floating down this peaceful river and getting faster and faster and faster because the current is going faster because we're heading toward the rapids. And now in the next 5 years, suddenly we're going to be riding the rapids. But after we learn to do that, we'll come out at the other end in another peaceful river, but it will be a much faster flowing river because now it's got all the momentum of the rapids behind it. So I think that's probably an appropriate analogy for what we're going to experience in the next few decades.
How do you think? I'm just thinking about this. Like if, and the joke's always like, oh yeah, a UFO is going to land in the that White House lawn, and pop out, and say, hey guys, we're here. How is humanity currently going to deal with that kind of event when we're so terrified about every little thing? What is it going to say about religion? It's going to throw things upside down.
Yeah,
I mean, chaos is not even, it's insane.
for some, it will. For some,
Sure.
nevertheless, this is where we've all agreed to go,
Mm,
whether we remember it or not. On a spiritual level, this is where we've all agreed to go. So we'll have to deal with it in our own ways, but you know, there's nothing that's going to really stop it at this point. Bashar, in the last, couple of months has said, look, it doesn't really matter much anymore what the outcome of your elections are, what the outcome of your political, social, economic, religious systems are. Contact is now inevitable. It's only a matter of what's the style that contact is going to take, because it's going to adapt itself to whatever we've decided to do here.
mm,
So we all are going to have to face the idea that we're not alone in our own ways. And some people will be okay with that, and some people won't be for a while. But that's the way it's going to go now because it's like a birth. The baby's coming. There's nothing you can do to You just have
right.
to decide what kind of an environment you're going to experience the birth in. You're going to be freaking out, or you're going to be saying, welcome to the world. Uh, I mean, your own situation is a case in point in terms of the acceleration you're talking about. I mean,
Mm,
like you said, how would you have imagined when you were doing post-production work in the film industry if I told you, well, within the next couple of years, you're going to be having a spiritual podcast? And you would probably look at me like I was crazy. But
hmm
here you are. And it didn't take very long for you to be where you are doing this. And the
Right.
acceleration that you've experienced having this podcast, from my perspective, has been quite astonishing.
hmm
So I think that even on an individual level, we're all personal examples of the acceleration that we're going to be experiencing collectively as well, where one moment we're like, no, that can never happen. And then 2 years later, you'll go, this was inevitable. It had to happen this way. And here I am. So,
And you also see, and Darryl, you also see it as well from, I mean, you've been doing this now 40 plus years, and
mhm,
you're more popular now than you have
mhm.
ever been in the scope of
Yeah.
the last, I mean, before it was like 40 people it was almost like an AA meeting. 40 people, there's some donuts in the corner, and we're gonna channel, or we're gonna talk about some spiritual stuff
Yeah.
in the back of a metaphysical bookstore. But
Yeah. Well,
now
yeah,
that was where it was.
that's the advantage of having also done this for so long, is I
Mm,
can really see the trend from the
yeah.
beginning to now. It's
Yeah.
very self-evident that it has accelerated. I mean, literally, I don't mean this in any kind of an egotistical way, but literally, I would say in the past year alone, the amount of people that recognize me now on the street, in the malls, when I go shopping, people, I mean, that to me is a signal that there are more people locking into these kinds of things than we think. When,
Hmm.
when I'm walking through the mall and people are running up to me and go, oh, you channel Bashar. When I'm in Home Depot and the people that work there walk up to me and go, I know who you are. When I go through airports and the TSA agents look at me and go, I know who you are. It's leaking into society in a way where not everyone's really talking about it, but I'm the one that gets to know that they know what Bashar is
Hmm.
all about, what UFOs are all about, because they tell me. So now at this point, this is happening 2 and 3 times a week.
Hmm.
Whereas I would say before, maybe once every couple of months, somebody would have said, "Oh yeah, I recognize you." Now it's like 2 and 3 times a week in bizarre places. Like I said, like the airport TSA people who are screening my luggage and going and
Hmm.
looking at me like, "I thought that was you," So like it's getting out there and it's accelerating quite a bit.
I gotta ask you though, how does that make you feel? Just on a human point of view, I mean, the fame and people like looking and recognizing you, because I've dealt with it as well. I mean, people recognize
Yeah,
me in the street now,
of course.
and it's
Well,
and it's
it's not about the fame. It's about the idea of
no,
recognizing that more and more people know what's going on. See, that's
I
why I
agree. Yeah.
call the biggest secret that everyone knows, because it's just that no one's talking about it until they find a
Yet,
safe place to talk about it. And they let me know because I'm the safe place. So
same here.
obvious. Yeah,
Same here.
same,
Yeah.
same. Right,
People.
exactly. Because you're
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
this, so they're going to say, Alex, blah, blah, blah. So the more people, and that's the other good thing about doing things like this, the more people that do this, the more people are the kind of people where people feel safe telling them that they also know they've had experiences and that they're doing this and stuff like that. So that's another reason why it's accelerating is more people are talking about these things and being the magnets or the icons that represent that it's okay to talk about this stuff. And then when you filter out into society and people come up to you and go, I recognize you and I know it's safe for me to tell you, I had this experience. I had that experience. That's unifying and accelerating the whole thing because it's like forming a different kind of internet of
Hmm.
people who are the nodal points that people feel safe revealing to them that they had experiences that are similar, that they feel okay talking about that because they don't feel they can talk about it to their friends,
You're
or
right.
their family, but they can talk about it with you. They can talk about it
Hmm.
with me. And the more of us that are out there talking about this stuff, the more places they have to talk about it, and it becomes more okay. So
Yeah.
that's another way things are accelerating.
Do you foresee a world where this becomes mainstream?
Oh,
Like really
absolutely.
mainstream? Yeah.
Yeah,
What's
absolutely.
what's the timeline, do you think, for
Oh,
something like that?
definitely. I think definitely after 2050. That's again the human reset is about a 30-year reset from 2020 to 2050-ish. So I
Hmm.
think definitely after 2050, all bets are off in that sense because we'll have had open contact, we'll know all these things are real, and we'll be exploring so many different avenues for evolutionary acceleration that I think by 2050, we're just this is all, just, yeah, of course, of course, of course, of course. We don't necessarily experience everything we're going to experience by then, but of course, this is all possible now. In the same way, again, the first airplane is like, okay, now we know this is possible. Look how quickly we went from the Wright brothers to supersonic jets and rockets. I mean, really, again, historically, that's an extremely short period of time in our culture to have gone from the first airplane to landing on the moon. I mean,
Oh,
even
within
even
50 years, yeah, 50, 60
yeah,
years, yeah.
but even when you look at the idea of what we had in 1959, we may have had sci-fi ideas and sci-fi stories about doing that, but until Kennedy said, we're going to land on the moon in this decade, I mean, 10 years from
Hmm.
1960 to 1969, less than 10 years to develop a space program that got us to the moon. That's incredible. And it's a sign of what we can do when we're all focused in one direction.
Hmm.
So I think we're going to see a lot of different areas of our society to, represent those kinds of acceleration areas where we're going to see it in in different areas of technology. We're on the verge of busting through fusion. We're on the verge of understanding probably free energy. We're on the verge of, understanding, discovering other planets where life may be possible. I mean, it's all accelerating in all these different areas at the same time. So I think by 2050, it's just going to be crazy.
Yeah, I saw the other day the sunset from Mars. Um,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I saw an image from the rover, and NASA released it. Like, oh look, here's a sunset in
On a,
Mars, and you're just like, what is happening? This is insane.
yeah, we can enjoy a sunset on Mars now, at least visually. Yeah.
Visually, it's absolutely mind blowing. So Darren, there's a question that was asked to me the other day, and I get asked it all the time, and I'd love to hear you and Bashar's take on it. My understanding is on the other side, when we are planning our life, our soul blueprint, our soul plan,
Hmm.
that we choose the character we're going to play and what we're going to do as that character.
Hmm.
Now, on the other side, it looks very much like you're picking an avatar in a video game. You're
Right.
like, hey, I'm gonna get this armor, this sword, this gun. I'm gonna be an elf or an orc or whatever.
Right. And I'm going to face
Some,
these. Yeah.
and I'm gonna face these challenges. But the problem with the thing that people have a question about is, you mean to tell me that you choose on the other side, in pure love and spirit, to come down here and do harm to others and hurt other people? So the main thing is this: did Genghis Khan, did
Yeah.
Alexander the Great, did any of these mass killers that came onto this planet choose that? And was it a necessity for humanity because they did do a lot of shifting in humanity's
Yes.
timeline?
Yes, in certain ways. Now, how that gets to be done can be done in different ways. But
Okay.
a player can say, I'm going to be some kind of chaotic disruption, because that's going to help humanity discover something they otherwise probably wouldn't discover as fast. Because when we are pitted against certain challenges,
Of
we
course.
do tend to overcome and accelerate by transforming them because we are now forced to. So it is one methodology. It's kind of the analogy that Bashar gives of, look, you go to see a play, and in the play, there's a hero and there's someone playing the villain. But when the play is done, they get together, they're friends, and they go out and have a beer together. They're no longer those characters, but they did agree to play a part. Now, how those parts are played doesn't necessarily mean it has to be the most dastardly, heinous, terrible, horrifying thing, but it does get chosen to be something that is going to cause humanity to react to it in a way that will force them to face things that help them figure out how to make sure that doesn't happen again, how to overcome those kinds of challenges, those kinds of limitations. So, yes, we are playing this yin yang game, and souls do choose to be on one side or another for that purpose. But we still have free will, and therefore we can determine for ourselves how it is that that can happen. So it doesn't necessarily have to be as extreme as it's been. And I think that's mostly the product of forgetting who we are and getting caught up in certain ideas of what it takes to do something. So, in other words, I'll use this example. Let's say you're talking to a criminal that uses a gun to get their way. When people think and have been taught that that is a sign of power, then of course they're going to use those weapons to gain what they believe is self-empowerment because they don't know any other way to do it. But when you teach them, look, using a gun is actually a sign that you believe you're too weak to get what you need in life any other way. So using that gun, forcing people to do things your way is actually a sign that you believe you are weak. And when people start to understand that, then they really start to be taught how to really understand what power is, because power is creative. It doesn't take any power to destroy. Any
Mhm.
kid can come along and knock a bunch of blocks over, but to build the blocks up, that's true power. So when people are taught that, then there can be, let's just say, more Zen-like ways in which someone that needs to teach humanity lessons can be done in ways that are not so destructive. They can still be polarized in energies in certain ways, but they don't have to be so destructive. There can be images that are presented, ideas that are presented, actions that are done that still force parts of society to examine a concept and transform that concept in ways that can move humanity forward. But they don't have to be so destructive, because those people don't have to experience things as expressions of weakness anymore. They actually have become the avatars of change by using what might be a negative energy to create a positive effect in a different way than we've been doing it, because we don't forget who we are anymore, and we don't forget what our source of power actually is. So that can
So,
change time.
okay, so so in other words, no one's on the other side going, I'm going to be Darth Vader, and this is the exact path I'm going to go down to change the universe. I'm going to have something traumatic happen to me, and I think at a grand scheme, like a broad stroke, I'm like, I'm going to do something that's going to wake up the universe. Well, in Darth Vader's example, wake up the universe essentially, because I've been given all this because and let's go, because you and I are both filmmakers and geeks, film
Mm,
geeks. On a story standpoint, and I think this goes with everybody, anyone who's ever done anything negative in this world,
mm,
in a mass way, Genghis Khan, Hitler, these kind of people. They were given a gift and great power. They
mm.
could have easily used that power for a more positive way than
Yes.
a negative way. So someone like, um, for like I'm Cuban, so Fidel Castro. Fidel
Mm,
Castro, really went in and took over, but he had a gift of being able to convince and lead people, and he's a great speaker and auditor, to be able to do. He could have easily done a lot of good, but he decided to go down the other path that we're still, there's still ripples of. Same thing for Hitler. Hitler could have been a positive force, but he
yes.
shifted, right?
Again, people forget who they are. They forget their connection to source. I'm going to
Mm,
give another example.
yeah,
Let's look at Gandhi.
yeah.
Now, in order to teach humanity certain things, he did some things that are actually considered to be, for most people, negative actions. Hunger strikes, to the point where he's almost starving himself to death. On the surface, looks like a suicidal negative action, but done for a reason to make a point that did transform many people in society and did
Mm.
transform his culture in certain ways. So that's more what I'm talking about. Someone that comes in and can use what might look like negative means, you know, what what they call, I'm losing the term at the moment, but sort of protesting in a positive way, standing up for what you believe, that in a way that might seem from society's point of view to be a negative thing, like the person that stood in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square.
Not
you
nonviolent
know
resistance, nonviolent resistance,
Nonviolent
essentially.
resistance, but it's still resistance, and therefore it still has that quality of saying, no, I'm going to do something in a way that most people in society would never think to do, that might seem very disruptive to society, but I'm going to be doing this for an incredibly positive reason of allowing people to see what's going on. So because I haven't forgotten who I am, I haven't forgotten my connection, and therefore I'm expressing true self-empowerment here, even though many people may look at it as a negative thing. and I'm forcing society to look at something that can help them choose to go in a different direction. So it's that kind of difference that I think we're talking about when people do plan things. But with the caveat, in some ways, on some levels, that if a spirit believes or feels that it is necessary to do something beyond the bounds of what society will accept negatively, that will actually cause a much more positive effect in the evolution of humanity, a soul could still choose to do it that way. And I know that's a hard thing to understand.
Mm.
But again, you have to look at the combination of factors and not just purely say, yeah, I'm going to be Hitler and I'm going to kill millions of people. That's too simplistic of an idea. But if a soul makes a decision to, I'm going to command attention in a lot of ways, and I'm going to put forth ideas that are going to be controversial, and I'm going to cause people to either react to that negatively or respond to it somehow and consider what I'm saying, there's still the extra factor that in physical reality, you still have the ability to forget who you are and think you have to do it in ways that are beyond what you actually probably really needed to do because you've just lost track of what you actually decided to do in spirit, and you got caught up in the physical materiality of things and think, oh, this is the only way this can be done. I have to kill people to do this. When in fact, there could have been another way that you could have made the same points that you thought you needed to make as a spirit, but then you get caught up in the idea of forgetting who you are in physical materiality, and you get caught up in the ways that you see other people doing things and think, well, that's just the way I'm going to have to do it. You just
So
forget.
you get lost in the part. So
You
the
get lost.
actor forgets that,
Yeah,
Keanu Reeves forgets he's Keanu Reeves and he believes he's John Wick.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's
That's what happens here. That's what happens here is you forget what you are as the soul being that made the choice to help humanity move forward through what might be seen as some quote unquote energetically negative means. But yeah, you actually become the part, you forget who you really are, you get caught up in the act, and then, things go sour.
Oh, now, but how about the karmic ramifications of a negative decision like that? So let's say someone comes down and is like, "Hey, we need this disruptor. There needs to be this thing or this thing or this thing to happen in a negative space." And they're making the conscious, like you were saying, they could choose to go down that path, but there's going to be karmic ramifications going down that
Well,
road, or is it
karma
not?
ramifications don't exist in the way people think that they do.
Explain
Karma,
it.
in its original meaning, simply means action. That's the
Hmm.
actual Sanskrit word. Karma means action. And what
Hmm.
it means is if you understand that you're out of balance and you take the actions to bring yourself back into balance, you have erased your karma. Your karma is simply the action you take to bring yourself back into a balanced state from being out of balance. So it's not the way people think it works energetically. And remember, when people pass on, everyone goes through life review and they
Hmm.
look at what they've done and they experience the consequences of every action they took as if it's happening to them.
Hmm.
So that's the lesson the soul learns to balance itself out and realize, oh, I forgot who I was. I really could have done this in a different way, but this is the way I did it. So I'm going to experience all the consequences of everything everyone experienced by my actions to teach me the lesson of what it means to take an action and create a consequence so that next time I can learn to do this in a different way. So the soul is also learning how to maintain that connection and that remembrance of, no, that's not the way to do this. If I'm going to choose to do something similar again, I have to do it in a different way. And this is then when you get the souls that are Gandhi and Mother Teresa and people who are doing things where it's like, look, I'm going to explore the ideas of poverty, and I'm going to explore the ideas of lack, and I'm going to explore the ideas of resistance, and I'm going to explore all this, but I'm going to do it in a way where I am showing you I have so much incarnational experience, hundreds or thousands of lifetimes, where I have learned as a soul the lesson of how to cause consequences in a way that is not devastating to humanity, but really is that finely tuned idea that allows humanity to go, you know what? I'm going to wake up because of this person's actions, and I'm going to do things differently because of what they're showing me.
So then you're
So,
essentially talking about an ascended master. So the ascended masters are doing that, but they've raised their frequency to such a
yes,
level that a Jesus, a Buddha, a Saint Germain, a Yogananda, they're shifting humanity in a positive way because they've at this point learned enough to know that I
yes,
don't have to kill 1,000 people or millions of people
exactly.
to make this shift.
Exactly, because exactly Jesus is a good example because he showed how fearful people were by allowing himself to be crucified. I mean,
Mm.
that takes chutzpah, you know what I'm
And then
saying?
some.
And then some. So that's the lesson taught in a different way, taught from the polar opposite way of a Hitler, is I'm going to show you how much fear you have within yourselves, not by getting you to kill what you're afraid of, but by getting you to kill me, to show
Mm.
you how fearful you are of some change that I'm suggesting to you.
Yeah.
That's what an ascended master does. So if Hitler had gotten everyone to face their fears in the way Jesus did, they simply would have killed Hitler and no one else.
Mm. Got you. But
That's
he did it in
that's
different.
the idea. That's the
So
difference.
are those? I mean, I'm assuming those are just younger souls who are
A
given that
lot of
kind of
them
opportunity.
are. Yeah, well, I mean, younger in terms of experience. All souls are
Yes.
the same.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
talk about old souls, younger souls, we're talking about how much experience does a soul have in a certain framework, like Earth lives or things like that. So, yeah, an old soul is simply a soul that has experienced probably hundreds or thousands of experiences on Earth, whereas a young soul may just be starting out with a dozen or something like that.
Right. And they're just trying to figure things out. They're like, this is a cool kind of thing. It's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like a freshman and a senior, essentially.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But, they could have been, basically they're the same kind of being, but they just don't have the same level of experience. And that's again what the whole life review is all about. You gain knowledge, you gain experience. Oh, it could have been done this way. It could have been done that way. This is the effect my actions had. I don't prefer that
It's
effect. I have to figure out another way to do this to get the same effect.
it's interesting looking at the analogy of sports. A rookie coming into the NFL, let's say, might have a tremendous amount of talent. We've all seen super
Mhm.
talented people who can accelerate very, very fast in that
Mhm.
environment. But
Mhm.
there's other rookies who have like a long 10, 12-year career,
Sure.
but they've learned so much more from being just playing the game again and again and
And
again
again,
and again, where you could start seeing, oh, that's how the defense is going to move. Oh, that's the quarterback's moved his leg there, so I'm going to be able to
exactly.
catch the ball. That's just experience. The same thing.
It's every single walk of life. And, that's why the old joke, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. You know, the more you do something, the more you develop a sense for that thing. I mean, I noticed that even in driving. I've been driving the streets of LA for over half a century. I
Right.
can tell what cars are going to do, even if they don't signal it. That
Oh
it's
yeah.
almost like the car takes on the body language of the driver. And
Yep.
so the subtlest little shift in that car is like that car is going to cut me off in about 5 seconds. And sure enough,
Yep.
they're
Yep.
not
Yep.
giving
Yep.
you any immediate, blatant indication they're going to do that, but they do it because you can read the subtlest change in the way
Right.
that car is being driven. And you just know what they're going to do in about 5 seconds. And they do.
It's so true. I mean, I've been driving not as long as you, but I've been driving a lot, and I drove a lot in LA as well, over a decade in LA. And
Hard to pick up on that. Yeah.
you can figure, you're like, I'll sense it, like, oh, let me just put the brake on. Oh, or
Yeah.
if someone's not, if someone's like, there's something wrong with that. There's something going on there. And I
Yeah.
remember there was one car was coming by and it was something going on. And I was like, I don't know what, I'm just going to back off. I'm going to hit the brakes a little bit. Just let them do their thing. That car stopped. Someone got out of the back seat, got into the front, started fighting, throwing stuff at each other, like trying to pull the guy out. I'm like, okay, let's just turn and let's go.
Yeah.
But you
Totally.
could, but you
You
can
can tell.
feel it. You can
Yeah.
tell. So yeah, on the soul journey, the same thing.
Same thing.
So let me ask you, in your opinion and in Bashar's opinion, what are the greatest challenges we have in these next year specifically, but let's say the next 5 years for the rest of this decade as humanity?
Well, again, from his perspective, really understanding how to apply the formula that he shares with all of us very
Hmm.
precisely. Again, he has been delivering these steps in what he calls the Interstellar Alliance social experiment, that are steps that he believes are important for us to take to put us in the correct energy for
What
open
are those?
contact.
I don't think you've actually ever spoken about that on the show. What are those steps?
The last several transmissions that he's done over the course of the last year have involved these very specific steps. The
Okay.
first one, very first step was start letting go of your conspiracy theories. Said it's not serving you. He said the things that you need to know. I'm not saying there aren't certain conspiracies. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
the whole UFO cover up is a conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
But said, but people get so caught up and make so many speculations about things that aren't true, and they get caught up in all of these conspiracy theories, some of which are even contradictory to one another, that he said you're being led down a path where it's not allowing you to understand what's actually happening. It's actually clouding your judgment to get caught up in all of these mishmash of conspiracy theories without any proof at all that what you're saying is happening is happening. So that's the first step he gave us all.
Mm-hmm.
And subsequent steps are things like contacting your representatives to say that you prefer the idea of disclosure for open contact and releasing of information about what the government knows about UFOs. It's also things like, look, go and volunteer to help, feed the homeless and stuff like that. Get out of yourself when you don't know what to do, when you feel like you're depressed or you don't know what your passion is. Go and help people feed other people. Go and help people build homes for other people. Go and help with animal rescue organization. Get out of yourself and go help and be of service to others by joining organizations that are being of service to others, to get out of yourself and find who you are so that you can really lock into what's going on. The whole idea again of the thing that's coming up of no more secrets is obviously another step in this social experiment. It's all about really looking at what you are as a social being and changing your relationship to everything around you so that you are being your true self, and that your vibration is going to be far more compatible with the idea of open contact when ETs are presented to society. So yeah, there's a series of steps in this Interstellar Alliance social experiment that are designed to help us raise our frequency and be more compatible to open contact.
In your opinion, do you think that humanity is going to have to be reset again, or are we going to be able to
I think
overtake that?
this is, I think, our reset. This 3 decade period is our reset. I think, like he says, there are other versions of Earth, there are other parallel reality versions of Earth, and some people may go in the direction of being on those versions of Earth that do require more resetting. But I think the opportunity is that for people who are willing to truly get in touch with who they are, be their true selves, be of service to humanity by acting on their passion in positive ways, I think this is the reset for them, and probably the only reset that humanity of that ilk will require to really start evolving in the direction they need to in a more positive way. But there are those who may need more resets, but they'll go and shift to other versions of Earth simultaneously, and we simply won't experience them anymore. and they won't experience those that choose to go in a different direction.
When you say this whole idea of the shifting, you mentioned this in another conversation of ours where every decision you're making is kind of shifting you into a new reality.
Hmm.
That you and I both have in my reality there's a Darryl Anka, in your reality there's an Alex Ferrari, and not that we're in each other's lives every day, but we exist in that world.
Right,
You could pick up a phone and call. Now,
right.
how does it work? Now, how does it work if you and I'm assuming you and I are shifting in similar directions because we're still talking to each other.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
how does it, so let's say and I'm being played devil's advocate here. In
Yeah,
high
yeah.
school, I had a best friend. I
Hmm.
haven't spoken to that guy in 35 years, whatever it is now. 40 years. I haven't spoken, 42,
Right.
whatever it is, 40 years. I haven't spoken to this guy. Um, but he exists. He
Maybe.
does. I mean, I could pick up the call. I mean, I know
Yeah.
people who know him.
Yeah.
So
Fine.
I could pick up the phone.
I'm not saying that the reason you might lose touch with somebody is always because they shift to a parallel reality. There
Yeah,
are
right.
there are different reasons for losing touch with
Oh,
someone,
of course, of
still
course.
having them available to you in your reality. So you
Mhm.
can still be on similar enough wavelengths that you're still shifting to the same kind of reality that you can still reach out and connect to each other. But maybe somebody just needed to take this path and you took that path, and then maybe, you'll come back together or not. But I'm talking about the kind of shift where that person truly leaves your reality. There's just no way to even find them anymore. They're gone. Whether or not they actually physically died, whether or
Mhm.
not they have simply shifted into a reality that you cannot reach because you're not vibrationally compatible with them anymore. Now, again, the caveat is that for a while, we may still, even if we're shifting off like this, we may still be able to reconnect. But what we're saying is the shifts are getting farther and farther and farther apart. So reconnecting may take more doing, more intention, whereas down here it takes very little because you're still close together. But the farther apart you go, there will be a time, if you're truly shifting into different realities, where this may not exist anymore, where you simply will not know, where did they go? I can't find them. I have no resource to find them. There is no way they're accessible to me anymore. Now, again, that doesn't necessarily mean that they've shifted out of the same kind of reality you're in. There may be a purpose for not having contact with them. But on some examples, it will be because they are shifting to a completely vibrationally incompatible version of Earth. And it's simply not vibrationally possible for you to really make a connection to them and stay in the reality you prefer because they're in such a different vibration. So right now, what we're trying to do and what Bashar is telling us to do is, look, I've explained how this works. I've explained the splitting prism. I've explained all this shifting. This is your final time to try and make those connections again. This is why it's important for everyone to start talking to one another, no matter how polarized and divisive you are, to see if there is any chance you can find a common third reality in which you can actually both come together and create something positive for all of these people who have differing opinions, and start looking at the fundamental reasons why you've been polarized. So he's saying, now is the opportunity to come back together, talk to each other, create a reality where you can move forward together. That's a different reality than the one you thought you wanted, the one they thought they wanted. Create a new
Right.
reality, a third reality moving forward so you can move forward together. There will be some people who can't do that or who won't do that. But here's the opportunity to do that. Start talking to each other. Start understanding why you believe what you believe. Start addressing the fundamental underlying reasons for why you think you need to believe that. Because very often the thing you're choosing as a surface reason for believing that can be done in any number of ways, and you can still fulfill your underlying wish, your underlying desire by doing it in ways that are more compatible with one another rather than being so divisive. So now he's asking us, and again, this is another step in the Interstellar Alliance social experiment, to work together and figure out how can we move forward more compatibly, even with our differences? Because he's saying, it's not that you have differences that's the problem. It's just that you have to make your differences compatible. That's
Hmm.
all you have to do. And the one way to do that is to figure out what's the fundamental underlying reason that you have these differences, because mostly they're all the same for everyone. We want to be heard. We want to be loved. We want to belong. We want to feel that we contribute. All of those things can be done and fulfilled in any number of ways without necessarily believing this political idea or that social idea or that religious idea or what
Hmm.
have you. We have to get back to the basics of, why do we believe these things? What are we really trying to fulfill in our lives? And can we do it in a way that's more compatible with one another, as opposed to choosing things that just can't be done for one person or another?
There, unless you and I are find some sort of yogic magic, become yogis and can live for another 200, 300 years, or find enlightenment in one way, shape, or form where we stay alive, or technology gets us around, we're generally not going to be around. You and me are probably not going to be around in the year 2100. Um, where do you see, where does your hopes and where do you think humanity will be in the year 2100, out of curiosity? And has Bashar ever spoken about what the potential of that time period would be for us?
Well, yes, it's the beginning of what he's saying. The evolutionary path for humanity is what he calls evolving into the sixth hybrid race, which is going to expand into the galaxy in a certain way. And we're going to become other civilizations, UFOs, eventually. We're going to
Right.
be that are going to help other civilizations up the ladder in the same way that these civilizations that we're dealing with are helping us up the ladder. So it's really about becoming members of a galactic society, a galactic family. And it's really about letting ourselves change in ways that give us more abilities. The hybrid beings are going to be coming to live among us. The hybrid children are going to be coming to live among us. There will eventually be blending,
Mm-hmm.
and we will be coming, well, as Bashar kind of puts it, we'll actually finally becoming fully human, because we're not fully human yet. So he sees that as the true evolutionary result of us opening up to accept more of who and what we are, connecting to our spiritual selves, bringing more of our souls through the physical experience of our lives, through our physical avatars, and really being star beings, really, really owning what and who we are. And that's going to really just change everything on the earth that we decide to go to, if that's the direction we decide to go. Again, there will be those that don't. But for those that do, I think it will be expanding beyond what we can imagine right now, because there are so many things we're just unaware of that are going on out in the cosmos that we can become a part of. We'll have unlimited resources. There will be no lack of anything. The whole science fiction scenario of, aliens coming to Earth to get our minerals and our resources and stuff like that. There are so many things out there. It's so abundant out there. They have no lack of anything, and no lack of an ability to get the resources that they need. They certainly don't need this planet to get that. What they need this planet for, and how Earth is so important to them, is what's going on the planet. The idea of how we're facing our challenges, how we're transforming things, the different stories that are being played out here, the effect that the conclusion of those stories have on the cosmos. It's our agreement to be the souls that experience these things and finish these stories that is really the important step to all of these alien civilizations. It's our discovery of our self-empowerment through these incredibly limiting challenges. This is why Bashar has for a long time called us the masters of limitation, because for a while we have been the masters of creating limitation. But when he then says, but what you're doing is learning to become the masters of limitation, where you can overcome those limitations, transform those limitations. And this is a challenging school. But the fact that we can overcome the limitations we put on ourselves is something that other civilizations are also learning from. Because if we can overcome these limitations, these incredible dark limitations, negative limitations, fear-based limitations, as deeply as we've created them and still overcome them, well, civilizations that may not be as steeped in those limitations can look at us and go, well, gosh, if they can do it, we can do it because we're not as limited as they are, and yet they can still overcome those limitations. So we're a good lesson for a lot of civilizations that are looking to us to be the ones that show this is how you do it. This is how you lose yourself and find yourself again.
Then let me ask you this, Darryl. We've spoken about this before, but since you brought it up, the story of the Anunnaki,
Mhm.
and that whole, they came for gold and they came for this and they came for the minerals and all that stuff. How does that story play? And I mean, I always looked at it as like if someone sat there and, knocked it down on a stone, some truth was there.
Yeah,
But how does that play with what you've just said that if there is, because a lot of people fear
yeah,
them
I
coming
understand.
down and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Well, okay. The caveat is there may only be certain places where there's an abundance of certain things. And we have to also understand that just because the Anunnaki may have been somewhat technologically advanced doesn't necessarily mean that they were very spiritually advanced.
Like it,
So,
like Atlantis was, they had some technology and some spiritual, but maybe not as much as of one or
right.
the other.
So
Got it.
we can't necessarily ascribe the idea that the Anunnaki were these all amazing spiritual beings. I don't believe they actually were. In fact, in creating Homo sapiens, I think we got a lot of their traits. And we're seeing a lot of that play out in the things that we do to each other. So all the legendary stories of the jealousies among the gods and so on and so forth, I think are memories of how the Anunnaki actually were. And we're very much like that. We are made in the image of our gods, and they are jealous gods. So I don't
Mhm.
think they were necessarily very spiritually advanced, even though they may have had a technological edge and enough technology to get here to mine the gold that they needed. Remember, the only reason that they did that is because their own planet was out of balance and they needed the gold to rebalance it. So I'm not sure that we're actually talking about someone that is as advanced as something like the Pleiadians
Mhm.
or, even the hybrids at this particular point, but they just had enough of a technological edge that they could get here to do what they needed to do.
So that was my next question. From my understanding, because a lot of people have always been told me that like they're fearful of Independence Day,
Mm,
or the alien species or a predator or these kind of
yeah,
alien species that could come down and destroy us with their technology, this or that.
yeah, yeah.
I've been in the camp, and, and
Mhm.
and correct me if I'm wrong. I've been in the camp that in order for certain amounts of technology to reach a species, you have to evolve to a spiritual place to have access to that. Because if not, Alexander the Great would have had a nuke, and this would have been over years ago.
Exactly. And again, there are levels to that because look at us,
Okay.
we are relatively evolved in a certain way and we have technological advances, but are we really that spiritually evolved? Most of us aren't.
Right.
So, there are levels to this, but the beings that are truly evolved, that are dealing with Earth and guiding Earth, also have the ability to keep those that are not as evolved away from Earth.
Oh, so we're
So
protected.
we're protected in that sense. We're watched out for in that sense. So even though there may be beings that might have that desire or who might just not care that much about us, the beings that do care about us are overseeing what's going on here and allowing only those that have our best interest at hearts to really engage with us in a deeper way. Whereas the other ones are like, you go take a back seat for now. We're watching this planet. This planet is important. You need to sort of just chill out back there and leave us alone for now and let these people evolve. So I think that they're helping be the gatekeepers for us at this point.
And it's and I don't know if you even know this question, but what is the technology that they're using, or at least the idea of the technology that they're using to be able to travel this universe when we look at it and going, it's impossible. Like, what are they doing? What is the technology?
Well, first of all, we are now creating new theories that it's not so impossible. We
Right.
understand there are such things as wormholes and things like that that a lot of civilizations may be using as the freeway system of the universe to get where they need to go much, much faster than we think is possible. But we even have our own theories. The math works now. We just don't have the actual technical ability to realize some of the math that says, oh, yeah, there is now mathematics that says that we could get to Alpha Centauri, which is, over 4 light years away and would normally take us thousands of years to get there, with the math that says we could get there within 2 weeks. We just don't have the technology to do that. But the math says it's possible now. We're at least at that stage. Now, the
Mm,
way that ETs may do it, not only using the idea of wormholes and portals and things like that, that we're becoming more aware of, is they may have a lot of other ways of doing these kinds of things. And
mm,
Bashar has described quite often the way that his civilization does it. It has to do with vibrational resonance. It has to do with the concept of understanding that location is an illusion and that it's based on your frequency of energy that determines what location you're in. So, in other words, even us moving through space by walking is actually moving through the illusion of space by redefining our vibrational location over and over and over and over again. So he's saying we're doing it already. We just don't know we're doing it. And if we simply say, okay, the vibrational location of location A is different than the vibrational location of location Z, which is way over there. But if I changed my vibration to the vibration of location Z, I would have to stop existing at location A and instantly start existing at location Z, because this is a holographic universe and all locations that look like they're far apart are actually all right here. And we have just literally shifted our frequency to match that of location Z. But in the physical linear reality, location Z is way over there, light years away. But in reality, it's not. It's right here. And the only thing that determines it's a different location is its locational frequency. And so their ships actually are capable of shifting their locational frequency to stop existing in one spot and start existing in another. And in physical reality, it looks like they've traveled a great distance. From their perspective, all they've done is just shift a vibrational resonance a little bit.
it sounds almost like when I've spoken to near-death experiencers, when they're on
Mhm.
the other side, everything happens instantly by
Right,
thought. You
right.
think you want to go to Paris, you're there. You want to
Exactly.
go you want to go to that mountain on the edge, but
Because
you're seeing you're
because
there.
space and time are not the same there, and everything is accessible all at once in the same place if you just focus on it. And so they have figured out a technological way to do that
It's
here in
similar
physical
way. Yeah,
way.
because
It,
we're
it's really the idea of, are you familiar with the idea in quantum physics of superposition?
explain it to the audience, but I understand. Yeah,
Superposition is where a particle or whatever theoretically exists in multiple positions simultaneously.
correct. Right.
And therefore, what they have discovered is the entire universe is in superposition, and every element in it is in superposition. The potential for an object to exist at any point in the universe is the same. And all they're doing is directing the energy of their craft and the crew within it, isolating them in some sort of force field bubble that unlocks them from any particular position and imposing a position they want to impose on it that represents a position light years away. And so, since they potentially already exist in that position and every position in the universe, they are manifesting more strongly one position over another. And so they blink out here and blink in over there. And
It's a
that's how
tuning.
it's a tuning.
It,
Exactly. Just like changing
uh,
channels on a television. Oh, I'm watching one program. Click. Now I'm watching another program. Totally different. It's the same idea. All the programs are all there. all running at the same time. All you have to do is change the channel and get a completely different story.
Oh, now that makes absolute 100% sense to me. The concept of like that's the idea of I use the concept of television for
Yeah,
all of our lifetimes are going on at the exact same time,
exactly.
all at the same time, and they're all
Right.
happening, but we only focusing on Friends right now,
Yes.
and then we'll go to Big Bang Theory afterwards, and then we'll go to Breaking Bad after
Yeah.
that, and so on.
Except now, with our expansion of consciousness and the, let's say, broadening of our bandwidth of
Mhm.
consciousness, now we can sometimes get a bleed through of Friends and Big Bang and
At the
say,
same
wait a
time.
minute, at the same time, and go, wait a minute, no, this is real. No, 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 that's real. And we can remember two different shows simultaneously or two different histories, what people call the Mandela effect, because we're getting bleed through from more than one reality at the same time, because our bandwidth is now capable of picking up on more parallel realities than we originally could. And that's why we're seeing those effects and things like deja vu more and more, and synchronicity more and more, and so on and so forth, is because of the bleed through that comes from the expansion of our bandwidth in our consciousness.
Darryl, what's the biggest challenge we have for the next 5 years as humanity to overcome to get to where we need to be?
I think the short answer is letting go of fear-based beliefs, understanding that there's no such thing as a lack of confidence. There's no such thing as a lack of trust. There's no such thing as a lack of abundance. It's just about what we're confident in, what we're trusting to be true, and what we're abundant in. We cannot be without confidence. Because even when somebody says, I lack confidence, they're very confident about that. So they have to see the paradox. They have to see the paradox in the victimization mentality that they're choosing that because they're getting something out of it. Maybe it's the only way they believe they can get the attention that they need in life because they're too afraid to stand out. They're too afraid to get attention for being their true selves because they're afraid that people will reject them or perhaps people will attack them. So it's about standing your ground, being who you truly are, letting go of your fear-based beliefs, understanding how the universe works. One thing that Bashar often says is, look, all of these things, these negative ideas, these fear-based ideas, just disappear when you understand how everything actually works. And that's why he explains things in a physics kind of way, because he's saying, look, if you just understand the mechanism, you know that this thing over here that you've been afraid of for so long can't be really true when you compare it to the structure of how things actually are. So that's why he spends so much time explaining the structure of existence, because when we understand what the structure looks like and how it works, then we know that certain things, when held up to it, are just fantasies. They're just misunderstandings. They're just mythologies that don't help us move forward. So understanding how everything works, understanding the true nature of existence is important for us to be able to really move forward, letting go of old-fashioned, outdated definitions and coming into the modern century with new definitions that work for us, that are representative of how things actually are. The oldest example, the simplest example he gives is, look, we still look at the sun setting every night and we go, what a beautiful sunset. Now we still use the word sunset. We know the sun doesn't set. We know that the earth is revolving, and that's what creates that effect of the sun going down. But we still say sunset. But we also no longer think that the sun revolves around the earth. We
Mhm.
understand why it looks that way. So he's saying you need to upgrade your definitions for a lot of things in the same way. You can still use the word sunset, but you understand that the sun isn't actually setting because it's not moving around the earth. The earth is revolving and moving around the sun. So you now understand the underlying mechanism that actually causes that effect. But the
Mhm.
effect and the mechanism are two different things. And that's what we have to learn. The effect and the mechanism are two different things.
Darryl, as always, I could talk to you for another 6 hours, and you will be a returning champion again in the future. I have no doubts.
I
One
plan.
day I'll get you. One day I'll get you down to Austin. I'm going to figure out how to do it. If I have to kidnap you from your escape rooms and bring you down, I might.
Yes, definitely.
Where can people find out more about you, Bashar, and your new company doing escape rooms in Los Angeles?
For anything they want to know about Bashar or the transmissions, they can go to bashar.org, bashar.org. For me personally, they can go to darrylanka.com, darryllanka.com for things that I'm writing like books and stuff. And if they want to come and play in our escape room, by all means, go to boggledescaperooms.com, BOGGLED, boggledescaperooms.com here in Los Angeles. Come and play.
Darryl, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much for the tireless work that you do to get the messages out from Bashar and this energy that you're putting out into the world that you've been doing before it was cool to do so. Uh, and
I'm
then
that
and thank
crazy. Yes, I'm that
yeah,
crazy.
you're that nuts. But I do appreciate you and everything you're doing to awaken this planet
Well,
and
thank you.
this
I
consciousness.
appreciate you too because you're doing the same thing. And it's my passion and my pleasure. And thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Thanks for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey, and don't forget to subscribe.